I would like to welcome Sarah Lewis from ShowHeroes. We've got Victoria Pindar from Xaxis, and we've got Matharu from Xaxis. Coming up, there we go. So we've talked about what it can do, we've talked about the opportunities. We have to, as a final session, really get to the bottom of what are we fearing when it comes to AI. You are going to be answering questions from me and hopefully from our audience as well. So I've got a question about, I'm going to go first. So it's a very contested topic about publishers. Are publishers in control of ChatGPT and its entrance into publishing? What does it become the saviour or the enemy of the news industry? Is it the maker or the breaker when it comes to the news industry? So coming first, Sarah, what do you think?
I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for it to, give us that base. But I think, we have to be careful, right? Because there's already, lots of fake news and all of that kind of going around. And it does influence people. So I think there is a responsibility when we're talking about news and publishing and what you're putting out there to make sure and to audit and to look at what we're actually creating and how that's influencing people. I saw a really interesting post recently, which other people in the room probably saw, where it had used ChatGPT to actually put together, it asked them questions, but basically from 3 different viewpoints. One from something that had learned the world from the Daily Mail, one that was from the Guardian, the Telegraph, and from the Sun. So their entire viewpoint was created from that. Then asked them questions, and the answers were obviously very different depending on those viewpoints. And by the end of it, sorry if anyone works for the Sun, but it had actually blocked itself because of some of the opinions that it was giving based on some of those questions. So there is this responsibility to make sure, I think, that we are inputting something that is genuine, and we're making sure that what we're putting out there is not just automated, but has that kind of layer of human creativity, human auditing, human kind of understanding on top as well.
And Victoria, Victoria or Sam, so what can and what can't generative AI do? Let's keep it journalism.
I think, well, it's not real-time, is it? It's not real-time data to kind of form that opinion. And I think, obviously, when you're looking at real-time news and you're keeping up with a news story, as we do, when big topics hit the press, I think it's really important that it is real-time, so we get the real facts, and it's not facts that are obviously generating themselves over time. I think that's a big differentiator, is that a human reporter that goes to, a scene can report there and then what's happening, whereas obviously with AI, take an opinion or what's been seen and then regenerate. So I think real time is actually quite important. Dangerous at times, I agree, and obviously the same with AI, but I think that's obviously a key differentiator.
And over at Xaxis, Sam, what's the word? What are people saying about what it can't do?
I just want to touch on that point first.
Yeah, do.
Because I've used ChatGPT to make like a newsletter code, and I've deployed it on Google Apps Script, right? And it takes any RSS feed in the world, sends it to my inbox every week. So I've made one for my dad, for astronomy. I've made one for myself for AI news every single week.
What's your news on? What's yours on? Or is it just on news?
Oh, it's just a general feed.
I thought your dad had astronomy.
All right.
He
loves like telescopes. He loves like understanding about when Sirius is going to come out, when Jupiter's out. So like, I've been using it to make tools, right? And I think I've been using it to take an article, send it to ChatGPT, get a summary in TLDR. And whenever I send around an article internally at work, I'll say, here's a TLDR, because no one bothers to read my articles. And I send like 1 million a day, right? So like, I read a lot of stuff. And I think for publishing, it'd be good to have a platform which takes real-time news, makes a TLDR, and has like a TLDR feed, like a Blinkist, but for publishers.
So Sam, staying with you though, because let's say this is a question. Should it be that we get to the point where you at least declare Sam's newsletter was generated in some way from ChatGPT? Do you think it should be at least acknowledge it, at least say it?
Yeah, you should acknowledge it, but I think there's a lot of stuff that AI has been doing for years, like Smarter Child for Microsoft, for MSN, that was AI. And AI basically is just an if-then function. Google Excel documents and Google Sheets are all AI anyway. So using if statements in Microsoft Excel to do analyses, So we've been using AI anyway for so many years.
And even outside of AI, are we always honest about who's written something? Like how many things are ghostwritten?
Yeah, like PR, for example.
I mean, that actually sounds an interesting point. There have been tools for years. What's the difference is sometimes it's not about the whole picture. I think what people are now doing is thinking they can rely on it for all, instead of it just to be done for helping hand, or to be done what's ultimately a lot of tasks that need to be done per day.
You can't, sorry, just to add, like, you can't replace experience as well. Like, especially if we're talking about news. Like, many moons ago, used to work for BBC, and some of the journalist stories are incredible. They're actually in, especially with the technology now, they can actually be reporting from a war zone through their phone, and they're actually able to broadcast live on BBC World News. They're experiencing it there, and the human stories, and that is incredibly powerful and really important in getting across things that are happening. AI can't do that. So there's definitely a huge benefit and role for it, but you can't replace that human experience. Exactly.
What you said, pulling those obviously RSS feeds and putting it into something that's scalable with that information, but it actually stemmed from an experience and somebody gaining that.
And also, you can't ask ChatGPT to do something without having the critical thinking. So I think critical thinking is going to become more important than ever. And I think what I've seen in advertising in the past 5 years or so is we're hiring Python experts, right? But we need to hire the people that understand who to hire and what to ask, and then they can ask ChatGPT for a prompt. So I've been using it to generate like causal impact models. So like a full script from scratch, gave it to my colleague, and then she used it in R. I've now used it to translate the R script into Python, add comments in, give instruction guides for people to use, and now people in my team are using it to like translate code from one language to another language. They're using ChatGPT to make dating plans for their first date or second date. So you can use it for So basically, I've got a colleague, right, and he took a girl on a date, and I said, second date, take her to Duck and Waffle. And I went to ChatGPT and I said, build me a table of place to go, opening times, closing times, how much you want to spend.
What to say? How to make that?
reviews. And then basically he's been using it to make a stag do plan for his friend in Prague, right? But he said, I can't give you any non-PG content. And then he asked it again, and he gave him like strip clubs and stuff. So you can make it give you some weird stuff, and people have cracked it with a jailbreaking thing called, I think it was Dan or something, right? So people are learning to hack into this neural network, because it's a neural network, right? And it's reinforced by either a punishment or a reward. So basically, if you fail an exam, you might get told off by parents, for example, right? But if you pass the exam, you'll get given a present. They've reinforced it with, it's called human-based reinforcement learning. So a human will go into ChatGPT and say, this is a good response, this is bad, and that's how it gets reinforced over time, right?
So what happened with, did you read the other day though, that ChatGPT on Bing fell in love with the person asking its questions? Did anyone else read about this? The actual AI almost turned on itself and started becoming this emotional being. I don't know, I might have fallen for the bullshit. But there was something as well, I think, where ChatGPT was writing a chat for AI and then turned on itself and started creating its own. That is fact then. Fiction, is it sound? Did you read about that?
I'm not sure, I've seen it.
When it starts populating itself and the very thing that exists is going to create itself. Okay, down path, I don't even know where I'm going.
Someone here mentioned earlier about artificial sentience, which is artificial intelligence learning to know what it's saying rather than just give you some text. So if it becomes sentient, it will start falling in love with people, right? But I don't think at the moment
it's not there. So let's go a step further and go to the real future, because I think so anyone here that held up their red card at the start, this possibly it's like that urban myth that machines are going to take over, that Terminator approach. Is there a chance that they might get out of control? Do we give it too much power? Is there anything we should be wary about? I don't know. Let's go with Sarah, go on. Anything we should be wary?
There's definitely some scary things about it. One thing that, I mean, this is just from the consumer level, one thing that scared me was the things kind of been mentioned earlier about women's body image. There was a AI created kind of influencer, I think it was less or something. That really, I found that really scary, because I think we have, we have so many standards and all these things that are putting pressure on women to look a certain way as it is. Suddenly we start creating a virtual version of something that we're meant to aspire to that we literally cannot ever meet. That's scary. I think I read a book recently. I won't say what it is because it's just released and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But it was fiction, but it's set in a world that is not far from ours. And it was actually part of it was they'd created an influencer, and this influencer got involved in a political campaign, ended up killing herself. What you then actually find out is that this was actually entirely a deep fake. The entire public had been kind of tricked, and the influencer wasn't real, had actually basically been created purely to influence this political campaign. That's scary. I mean, that was fiction, it's not, but it doesn't feel like that is actually that far in the future of being possible. So I think when it comes to especially young people growing up with these kind of influences and being manipulated by them, I think that's something we definitely have to keep an eye on.
To add to that, I mean, Rob touched on it earlier, as a parent, trying to keep ahead of the game on the content that's consumed, what's real, what's not real, answering questions, I think that worries me in terms of just being able to monitor it, and control it. I mean, I'm already asking my friends a question, how do you control this? What happens when you get to that? They're literally like, yeah, you've got to step up your game for social media, passwords, etc. But when it comes to this, I think it's another level, and I think it's about educating people on how to control it within reason, so that people still get educated, kids still get educated, still ahead of the game. You know, it is a time when actually it can influence and help them, but we need to be able to moderate it and understand it as well, so it doesn't get out of.
So if we don't fear it, do we trust it?
It's a hard question. I said to someone the other day, when you say something to me, I can't see your brain and how you've got the information. So it's the same with AI, right?
Yeah.
I also said to, I spoke to Ginger May last week, and I said you've got artificial error. So you've got human error and artificial error. We expect humans to be not perfect, but then we expect AI to be perfect. You need some sort of artificial error, right? So like a p-value within your analyses, for example. I think trust as a definition is consistency over time. That's what trust is, right? So you can have bad trust and good trust. Bad trust is when you trust someone to be late all the time to meet you. Good trust is when you trust someone to be there for you, right? So I think it depends what you define by trust. You can trust it to be bad, you can trust it to be good, but I trust ChatGPT to give me at least some sort of answers on anything I ask it, which is, I trust it to actually give me a response. Sometimes it doesn't give me certain data because it's trained up until 2021. When it becomes real time and there's like an ethical council that governs it, I think I'll be able to trust it more. But I did ask it the question, what sort of challenges do I face with using you? And it said accountability was one, transparency was another, because it uses a neural network that I can't see what's in this black box, right? So I don't know what's going into it. Another one is timeliness of data. Another one's fake news, as people say. Yeah, and I think fake news though, you can validate fake news. You can just go, here's a fake news article, can you scan the internet and validate it against all of this stuff? And Google have barred, right, but they screwed up and lost $100 billion in revenue in valuation, right? I think Google have Anthropic, which they just invested $300 million in. OpenAI is also their competitor, right? And I think Google already have a massive corpus of text across the internet. They can use all of their powerful technology, and I think they're going to plug it into all of their systems. But Microsoft are going to use it within Excel, PowerPoint, Teams are already using it. And I think all of the graduate level jobs across analysis will be taken away, because you'll be able to just ask it to do everything. Take this Excel, put it into PowerPoint, or for Google, take this Google Sheet, put it into Data Studio, provide analysis every week, send an email to a client. You can just automate all these boring processes.
So you say that though, and you say about analyst jobs potentially a risk. But let's think about programmatic. That was a belief that when programmatic came in, it was going to lead to lazy media buying and a complete culling of the media buying layer. It did not happen. It actually made us more efficient as an industry, and I think it's been a benefit. So I go the other way. I don't think it will get rid of people. I think it'll be, going back to your first point, Sam, you just have to change that role, analyst, of what you're analysing and what your job role is. Do you think that's fair, Sam?
Yeah, I think AI is going to be an assistant for people. It's about knowing the prompts to use, knowing what you want to ask it. I've asked it to make tables instead of bullet points because it's just a prose text and I don't know.
I think it's action tables.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
That's the next step.
This table right here. Yeah, I think I've been using it at work to make certain algorithms for DV360. I can't tell you some of them because they're proprietary, but I've been asking it, I said, here's my brief, here's what I want to do, here's syntax, can you develop this script? So yeah, I've been using it to do that.
That's really interesting, because I was going to ask you how you're using it in each of your companies, in the same way that we did with the first panel. Exit B, micro moments, or are you using automation, using that? Just say how you're using it, and then what it can't do.
Yeah, so we use the automation element to recognise when a user is between what we call digital journeys. So finding that moment when they're most likely to have attention. Rob, we can have a conversation afterwards. And within that moment though, it's the human side, because then we talk about actually from a creative perspective, you've got their attention because it's the only ad on the page at that point, because it's when a user is about to leave the page. So how do you use that moment creatively? And we often get sent assets that are standard banners, standard MPUs, but that's a different type of attention on that page when you're amongst other ads. So it was actually really interesting listening to you, Amy, because it's it's understanding actually from a creative standpoint, what can you do differently in that moment, because the mindset is very different.
You've got the moment, you've got the technology,
you've got their attention, you've got the digital KPI. So actually from a creative standpoint, how can we better optimise that? And I think A/B testing, but obviously you've taken down an automated route, it's understanding time and time again we offer clients the opportunity to A/B test creative, take that data and then use it on the next campaign. But actually, I would probably say 2% of the time people actually do it, and they will still send you a standard MPU or a standard banner. So it's using the AI to understand the moment, so the exact right time to speak to that user and who that user is, but then it's using the human creativity to understand actually how do we best portray that message to that person to meet the end result, because obviously there's multiple KPIs in digital as well, so it's understand what is that KPI, what is the right creative, and how can we marry the two
and do that.
Yeah.
And for you, Sarah, at ShowHeroes, there's a lot of, it's a people-based company as well, but how are you using automation?
Yes, there's a couple of different ways. I mean, we have a contextual solution as well, so of course machine learning comes into that, but we also have our own studios and production team who create a huge amount of content across a really wide range of topics. So when I was speaking to the head of studios this week, one of the ways that they're using it is actually for searching, and because as you can imagine, a lot of research goes into these videos that we create, and actually finding it really efficient for finding facts and for finding different things. And also we're investigating, how it can help us to create content efficiently as well. But I very much think that the creative level of our team is married with the kind of giving a base or a starting point, or automating things like translations, because we work across many different markets. That's where it's really helping, but we still really need my creative team, especially when I'm giving them projects and I've given them an absolutely terrible storyboard that I've made and they give me back something absolutely beautiful. You really see that value of the creative side. So yeah, there's different ways that we're using it, but I think it's helping to make things efficient, but marrying it with that creative human element. Yeah.
So you say that about creative, but there is a fully automated creative agency called uncreative.agency that's been created, it's 100%. Discuss, Sam, what do you think? Have you heard of it? Have you seen their work? Uncreative.agency.
I've read an article last night because I was also prepared. Yeah, I think, I don't really know if I'm honest. I think DALL-E 2 is quite basic at the moment. I think these AI tools aren't very advanced. I personally think that, so you've got different types of AI, right? So AI as a whole consists of AI, machine learning, and neural networks, right? The further you go down to, let's say, deep learning and neural networks, the more it's around how it replicates human beings, right? So Tesla uses deep learning to learn about how to drive a car safely. I personally think that the way to use AI in the future is to use neural networks to basically look at the creative, figure out which creatives are doing well, and learning through all of these different neurons, and then optimizing in real time. And like Rob said about using attention for inventory, attention for creatives could be massive, right? So you have a pre-bid to look at the inventory, and then you have pre-bid to look at the creative, post-bid results feeding back into one place where you've got creative and inventory, and then you're optimizing the right creative in the right environment for the right person, with the right message, with the right product, the right outcome, right? That's how I see it working. And I work with Adelaide. We've got Jordan over there, who's from Adelaide, your competitor, they were XYZ. And we basically use a data set, and we build predictive models off of it to find lookalike inventory, right? And the cookie as well means that inventory is going to be more important than ever. Context is more important. Context is king. So we're using that to find predictive inventory in the DSP through Xander and DV360 mainly. But then what I'm doing in DV as well, especially, is making custom bidding scripts to optimize towards attention in real time. But we're also using things like multipliers in real time to make changes in the bid prices depending on the trends. And we look at things like search trends as well to map out how to be more or less aggressive per day. So that's how I see it improving.
I think, and Sam, there was a lot for you to take in there from what Sam's doing, because my next question was going to be, what can you do, what can you recommend to everybody here of steps you can take to learn it? Sam, that's a high level of, but give me one thing that everybody should be doing. I'll come to you, Victoria, and then to you, Sarah, of really just do this one thing to get your head around it, or to implement. What would it be, Sam?
To understand AI or ChatGPT?
I think AI. You've got to go with AI.
Read about what AI actually means.
Yeah.
It's artificial intelligence. Intelligence just means to understand and respond to something, right? That's what it means. So it's an artificial human being, and it's replicating the brain in an artificial environment. So reading about things like machine learning and
So understand it. Your advice
Yeah.
is understand it.
Yeah, and artificial intelligence is 67 years old, so the same age as Bruce Willis, Bill Gates, and a few of the famous people. Yeah. So it's 67 years old, and it's older than the World Wide Web. So it came out like 15 to 20 years before as a concept of how machines can replace human beings, right? So it's older, but I think reading about
And it hasn't taken over. We're not eliminated yet, so we're all right.
We're going to be living with it, right? And we're not going to be living. It's not going to be replacing
It's not
us.
going away,
No.
so
Yeah.
it's about.
And I think neural networks are going to be massive because in media, I don't think anyone's cracked the way to find feature importance in DSPs, for example, and build their own algorithms. So let's say you've got a device, time of day, day of week, etc. Or you've got creative with different elements in there. The neural network will break down the different parts of the creative and find this feature in the creative. The top right of the creative, the logo, is the most important, let's say 70%, and it gives weightings, and then it'll give you recommendations. And I want to have something that does that, feeds it back into the DSP, and then optimizes the creatives like that, rather than just doing random DCO stuff.
And maybe use ChatGPT to plug in, define neural networks.
And Microsoft have ChatGPT, right? So Microsoft will probably open it up to their whole suite of platforms. So you can start buying with ChatGPT through their DSPs, right? And they've got Netflix coming out, right? Or it's already out right now. So you can say, I have this brief, I want to target these people, find it, and do it for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. Victoria, for you, a bit of advice, take away what to do, don't be scared of it, do what? What is it?
I think not overcomplicating it. Jonathan mentioned earlier, sometimes we create problems instead of solutions. So I think with this, not overcomplicate it and really understand the role and the expectations for it to play. Otherwise, I think you could go down many different routes. I think it's just thinking about actually what is the challenge and how can that aid whatever I'm trying to do. So what is my business model? How can it aid it? How can it be more efficient? Instead of trying to do too many things with it and actually not getting very far or going down a negative route with it. I think it's understanding the expectations, general life skill. What's the expectation of this? How do we apply it?
And apply it to your business.
To your business specifically, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think one thing, don't panic. I think probably sounded quite negative on this panel a little bit, but I was actually a green card. I think it's really exciting still, and I think there's a lot it can do, and we're just at the cusp of it. And also give it a go. I think there's so many tools now, and ChatGPT is kind of probably used by most people in this room at some point. But give it a go and see the potential. I think without us kind of testing and learning, I think that's how it's going to grow and how it's going to evolve from in a positive way if everyone is kind of helping to put in and influence that.
Thank you, Sarah. Coming to the audience for one last time for your questions for our panel. Does anyone have any questions on this?
I think everybody's talking about these sort of feedback loops to optimise targeting towards audiences. But you see this with newspapers now, where opinion's getting more and more polarised. So if you go to The Guardian, you're getting more and more left-wing views. Go to Telegraph, more and more right-wing views. You're ending up with sort of walled gardens of opinion. So how are you going to prevent that from happening?
Interesting. Go on, Sarah.
Oh God. No, I think it's a really good point, but it is, again, it comes down to you're getting out what you put in. So I think it's, if we get more polarising, so potentially does the output of something like ChatGPT. So I think it's, I think this is more it being a mirror of society that I think was mentioned earlier. So I think that is more we have to look at ourselves and our society and how, and how that influences.
I think as well, think about it this way, humans still have a choice. I still have a choice if I want whether I choose to read The Guardian or The Telegraph, and the content that's provided, I'll stop reading it if it's not right, if it doesn't serve me well. And I think ultimately that will dictate it.
And looking at lots of different sources as well. I think if we get more and more polarising, it's very easy to stay in a bubble and have your what is it, confirmation bias. I think there's a huge amount out there, and content being able to be generated quicker means that there is potentially more out there, more to look at. So yes, I think don't stay in a bubble and try to look at more.
Go on, Rob.
Okay, so I've been in the business for a long time. I've heard a lot about various different solutions which are going to come along and make everything more efficient, enable people to be more productive. What makes AI different?
What makes it different?
Go on, Sam.
I think using neural networks to classify images and to analyze them in real time is something different, because human beings can't do all of these things. So like, let's say Netflix's recommendation engine, for example. If you know a friend, you'll be able to recommend some things to them, right? Yeah. But machine learning, for example, replaces the need for a human being because a human being can't do it. Deep learning driving a car is a direct replacement for a human being. So machine learning and recommendation engines you can't do yourself. So I see it as being like a human being on steroids, with a brain on steroids, right? But deep learning and stuff like that, driving cars, is just to replace humans directly. So I see it in two ways. I see it replacing humans in technology, so like building, for example, or doing manual tasks. But in terms of like intelligence, I see replacing human beings for things like recommendation engines and Netflix, and we've been using AI for ages. I think what makes it different is it's gonna basically make technology for the first time a human being, and chatting to these things like ChatGPT, it makes you feel like you're talking to it properly. You're not asking it for links for stuff and going through the links, and it's going to change the consideration process for all buying, right? Because I used to have to go through 10, 20 links, look at the car I wanted, for example, and then make a test drive booking. But now I can say, ChatGPT, here's my brief of the car. I've got a family of 5, for example. I earn this much money per year, find me everything. And spend all that time, all that understanding of the internet, and give me that information. So it's going to reduce the amount of time we spend on our lives doing all this boring stuff. It's going to allow us to have more leisure time, but it means that we're going to become quite reliant on it. But the people who are going to succeed, I think, are the ones who understand AI properly, and the ones who know how to use it. And it's like, before the internet, nobody gave credit card details to anyone, right? And to get people to purchase on a website took a long time. So it's similar to that, and it's the same sort of process, right? And we give all of our details to Apple, we give them to Google, etc. So why are we scared of AI now? Because they've got that database, they've got the corpus of text, they've got all of that information, they're just building machine learning off it and stuff. So
I think the key is educating, as you said. Everybody's been using it all the time and replacing. It's just educating to make it efficient. Otherwise, it isn't efficient because you'll spend your time. So I think that's quite key to that.
And as human beings are kind of, let's face it, our default setting is to be a bit lazy. So I think it's ensuring that we're actually still improving and still kind of adding a human layer as it kind of gives us that tool as well.
Because there are people that enjoy, like my friend's getting married, and she enjoyed the whole setting up the Excel sheet individually, research, and that's my area of absolute hell. I've been engaged for 8 years and there's a reason. That's not that my partner's going to marry me, I have to say. She showed me that spreadsheet, I was like, no, anytime soon. So actually, if that could do all that for me, I'd be a happy person.
Well, yeah,
You can do it.
I'm getting married in a couple of months and I'm kind of wishing now that I had used this. It's a little bit late now, because it's been I wish a year ago that I had, because I'm very inspired by some of these examples now. Maybe I wouldn't be quite stressed about it.
Sounds going to tell us it can all be done.
This is interesting. Right? So I'm
Let's talk after.
I'm going to Paris in a few weeks to meet Richemont for a talk about attention and how we measure attention and report to them. And I asked ChatGPT, I'm going to Paris for a couple of days, give me a plan of places to go, etc., etc. And it spat me out a table, so I put it into Google Sheets now. I'm going to be using that. So when it does become real time, I'll ask you for the latest news articles and whatnot. But at the moment, it's up until 2021. That's the biggest issue, I'd say.
Yeah.
And human beings have availability bias, right? Which is, if I read 5 books, my limited knowledge is of those 5 books. You get the same thing in AI, right? But once it becomes unlimited, then the availability bias is going to be reduced. That's probably one of the biggest biases in these training data sets.
So it feels like don't fear it, learn it would be one of the things. And one final question before we go to the networking. Mark, go on, hit us with it.
Right, okay, so question for you guys, but also for the other panelists and Amy and Rob as well. Today's theme is humans v tech. And I was really thinking the other day about ChatGPT, which I don't think is a very easy name. I think if we went onto the street and asked anyone, what is ChatGPT? 90% of people would go, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So is your question, Mark, to the panellists, is brilliant. And to
To all of
anyone,
you,
give
yeah.
me the best replacement name for ChatGPT.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. This is
Can
brilliant.
someone
Rob?
do that?
Go on.
A holding company name, OpenAI.
Yeah.
Amy?
Or conversation assistant.
Mine's going to be chitty chitty chat chat.
Do it for you.
Whoa.
Sam,
Oh, I don't know. Chat with me.
chat with me. Victoria.
Gosh, pressure. Everyone's mentioned something. Wedding planner.
We've got Jay. Still here. Go on, Jay.
Oh no, I tried to hide.
I will find you.
I think ChatGPT is a great name.
Hey, go on, Jonathan.
Yeah, do my job for me.
Brilliant, wonderful. And I think that's been excellent. Thank you.